Coaches Collaboration Podcast presents
Take Note Tuesday.
Oh, I'm sorry. You don't have a lot of time? No problem.
Each week, we'll pick a topic and drop some knowledge in a short, concise mini episode.
Take Note Tuesday is a production of the Coaches Collaboration Podcast, hosted by Cole Warren of Salutum Health and Performance, Josh Pearson of The Complete Athlete, produced by Brooke Stevens.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to start up.
Let's go!
What's up, people?
Cole. Take Note Tuesday.
Take Note Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen.
It's Tuesday already?
It is.
Oh, man.
Damn. It's like yesterday was Monday or something.
Or something, man.
Jeez.
Cole.
What's up, man?
Cole. We're talking about you today.
We're talking about me.
We're talking about your philosophies today.
Salutum Health and Performance.
Salutum Health and Performance.
Yeah. So
Just rolls off the tongue.
I know, right? But yeah, this week we just kind of want to go over my coaching philosophy, kind of how I view things, and I think this would be just beneficial for my athletes who do listen to the podcast. So, because a lot of them are satellites, so I don't get to actually see them in person. So
Right.
a lot of stuff doesn't get really communicated, just because that's kind of how that works when you
Right.
don't see them all the time. So, I figured doing something like this would help communicate kind of how I view things and the way that I program and why I program that way, and kind of the grand scheme of everything that's going on. So, I think. So for me personally, and in my coaching style is, it kind of goes along the lines of powerlifting is a lifetime sport. So, I want my athletes to be able to achieve a sustained amount of progress over a long period of time. So in order to do that, I kind of have an issue with the word conservative, because it has a little bit of a negative connotation, like you're not pushing yourself
Yeah, like
hard
you're
enough.
holding back.
Right.
Yeah.
But I believe a lot in submaximal work. So you're getting a lot of work, a lot of volume in something that's more so around RPE 6 to an RPE 8, instead of really pushing that envelope and going to a 9 or a 10 every week, because, that can be very tough on your body.
Right.
And over time that it compounds, and years of that is it's going to lead to an injury, or it's going to lead to maybe you just burning out.
Right.
And not liking the sport as much anymore.
Maybe not PRing as much as you'd like.
Right.
Right.
Because if you do something like that, yeah, you're going to get strong right away, because you're pushing your body and you're forcing that change to happen.
Right.
But training like that just isn't very sustainable. So my philosophy...
Turn your fucking phone off, Brooke.
My philosophy kind of takes that into account, and it kind of I like to ride that line between pushing your body to its limit, but also staying conservative enough where you're not going to really put yourself at a huge risk of injury. So a lot of people, I don't know. It's for a lot of my athletes, I have to kind of explain that a little bit to them, especially at first, because they're like, how am I going to get stronger if I'm not fucking redlining it every week? But
Right.
it's funny, because soon they realize, after a couple blocks of working with me, it's like, holy shit, I can get strong without pushing that limit every time.
And it's still going to be hard work.
Oh, it's
You're not pussing around.
exactly. It's very hard work.
It's still progressive. It's still,
yeah. So
continually challenging yourself.
Right. And for me, I think it's my responsibility as your coach to keep you healthy. And every time an athlete gets injured or sustains an injury, it weighs heavily on me, because if they were doing my programming to a T, like how I have it prescribed, and they get hurt from that, then I don't like that, obviously, because it's hindering them, and then it's causing pain to them, and then also holding them back from their goals. So
You mean it's not because you're not going to get paid then?
no.
Oh my goodness.
Because I actually care about the people.
You mean
that
your
I work
athlete,
with.
when they get hurt, you actually give a damn?
Right?
Fuck.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
But yeah, and I think just through my experience, that's just the best way to do it, because it's going to allow the lifter to have a longer career in the sport, and a longer career is going to lead you to higher numbers anyway,
Right.
because you're going to be able, you're putting all this work in over time that's going to lead to those higher numbers. So, yeah, man. I guess that's kind of the gist of it. I don't know. You got any more questions for me?
For
Keep
sure.
talking
So,
here? Yeah.
again, we're doing this for all of your satellite athletes. So if you were to meet your satellite athlete in person, what are like the 3 things they need to know about what you program? Like, why do you put squats on this day? Why do you put bench on this day? Why are the rep schemes the way they are? Like, why?
Yeah. So, and I actually had an athlete ask this on my Facebook page a while back, and I hadn't gotten around to answering it, but the way I program for the athletes, when I initially get an athlete, most all of them are going to do an intro phase right away.
Okay.
So that's kind of, and the intro phase is going to look relatively similar between all athletes just because it's a starting point, because we don't have any history together. So this is kind of a starting point, and then it's going to adapt over time. So depending on what we do, I'm always looking at, say, hey, we did a higher volume block and you responded very well to that. So I'm going to, I have notes on all my athletes. I'm going to write that down. Hey, their body responded well to volume, or say their body didn't respond to volume. They felt beat up all the time. I'm going to take note into that as well. And then in the future, we'll probably next block, maybe I'll cut down the volume and throw more intensity in there and see how you respond to that, and so on. So that's why the first couple months, especially with a new athlete, it's kind of trial and error, because I'm trying to develop a rapport, trying to see what works with them. And then as we work together longer, it's going to be more finely tuned to what we know works for you specifically. So it's interesting with the coaching wise, because it's like the longer you're with them, the better it gets.
For sure. Yeah.
Because the coaching and the cues and everything is going to be more refined to whatever you need specifically as an athlete.
Whoa. You mean to tell me you're not just giving them a cookie cutter plan? You're actually talking to your athletes,
Yeah, man.
and adjusting it as you go?
Crazy, right?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You mean I can't go on Google and just pull that shit up?
No, man.
Why? Come on.
That's what you're paying for.
I can't go in the back of a magazine and get Ronnie Coleman's
you
old
can.
programs out, and
You can,
that's going to work for me, isn't it?
but you're not Ronnie Coleman, are you?
Nobody's Ronnie Coleman. Nobody looks like him. Nobody acts like him.
But yeah, and then also as far as my structuring of blocks and everything goes, is it also depends on like your meet schedule. So obviously if you're like within like 13 weeks of a meet, that's where I kind of like do a prep.
Right.
So it's kind of more of like a formal like volume strength peaking block, or say it's someone who responds very well to volume. We might do 2 volume-ish type phases and then peak into the meet. And then also vice versa. If they don't like volume, it'll be different. But that's kind of, I have like a grand plan for each athlete. So if we have like an off season, we'll kind of be able to mess around a little bit with movements and stuff so that we can maybe work on more weaknesses. But then once we get closer to that meet, the blocks and the training is more tailored specifically for them, and also tailored specifically for those competition lifts. So for example, right now, I had 3 lifters in a meet, or in 2 meets, and now one of them doesn't have anything planned. So it's like, all right, well, we'll just do like a little bit of an off season. So, and this was a perfect time. He was like, hey, I want to try some of these stuff, like these things. I'm like, sure. Yeah. Let me see what you have, and we'll see if we can work it in. So we're doing like some pause squats. I gave him some tempo bench press,
More
some
general
pause deadlifts. Yeah. Just some stuff because I mean, to be honest, powerlifting training can get boring.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're prepping for a meet, especially because you need to be so specific for those 3 movements that you can't really deviate from that very often, just because you'll sacrifice the specificity. So, yeah, it's fun being able to, kind of mess around and see what works for athletes. And it's so interesting because, I mean, you read like a lot of the literature on training stuff, and it's more like general, like this is how you do it, this is how you do that. But when you get down into working with specific athletes, it varies so heavily,
sure. Yeah,
so
yeah.
heavily. Like it's almost like those like studies and stuff like that are like very general.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a coach, you have to be able to realize,
Yeah, they're talking on a population level.
yeah.
Not
So
an
you,
individual.
Yep. So then you have to be able to fine tune and
Right.
use those things that people find out through these studies, but use them like in different situations to fine tune for whatever that athlete needs.
Right.
Um,
So for the listeners that haven't listened to every one of our amazing podcasts, when it comes to competitions, where do they lie for your athletes? Do you recommend them right away? How do you go about that?
It kind of depends. So I will say for someone who is looking for a coach, don't get a coach when you're like already prepping for a meet. It's best if you like just got off of a meet and you're like into like an off-season type program where you say you have like 20 weeks before the next meet you want to do. That way you can kind of do that off-season thing with the coach and you have time to figure out what works for you before you have to prep for a meet. So that's what I would kind of advise to people who are like looking into a coach. Do it like right after a meet or when you know you have time, but a lot of time before the meet. But I have athletes that started up with me when they just, because that's what most people are doing. Like, shit, I got this meet in 10 weeks.
Right. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right. So I should look into a coach.
Right.
Which, I mean, that's good, but it kind of makes my job a little tough sometimes because I don't really know what works for them.
You have a little guesswork to
Right.
do.
So
Yeah.
I'm just going to kind of put this general idea on there that I know works for most people and then adjust on the fly.
as much as you can.
Right.
yeah.
And then prep you into the meet that way. But
Yeah, and another thing that's great about you is you're not afraid to go to a lot of your athletes' meets where you'll actually show up.
yeah,
You know, that's really cool because you were just telling me last weekend you just went to a meet and, I mean, it's this guy's first meet that you've been with him. Right? I mean, most coaches will just, okay, do your meet and let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
You actually show up if you can.
and I think that's one of the great things that I offer is that meet day coaching because
Yeah.
for a lot of people, the meet day is the scariest part
So
of everything.
stressful. Yeah.
Because, and if they don't have anyone there with them that really actually knows what they're doing, then it's kind of just a crapshoot.
Yeah.
You're just like,
Imagine the anxiety
yeah,
if your coach is like, good luck.
yeah,
What?
yeah. Well, and that's kind of the tough thing about the satellite thing is like you basically just have to give them, hey, these are what I think your numbers will be. And hopefully it's not their first meet if it's a satellite athlete.
Right.
But for first meets, I like to be there with the athlete just so I can kind of show them how everything works.
Right.
I'm a resource for them. They can ask me anything. I've been at my fair share of meets.
Right.
I know how stuff runs. So it's almost like,
You're a buffer.
yeah. I allow them to just like experience it in a different way because their stress level is lower.
Right.
Because they have me there, they can kind of tune into other thing that's going on and learn from other things like that.
Yeah. And with the style that you go about coaching your athletes, because they're not always redlining, they always have a little extra in the tank.
Yeah.
So they can have a great first meet
Yeah.
where, holy shit, I didn't realize I could squat, bench, and dead, all of that. Holy shit. And that's what's really cool about your way of training too, is you can max all day every week in the gym, but if you can't pull it off on the platform,
Doesn't
it doesn't
matter.
count.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So again, your way of training to a lot of people is, they're taking the easy way out, but you're not.
No.
You're making sure you're keeping your batteries charged for when you actually have to exert.
Yeah. Like for example, I mean, a couple podcasts ago, we talked about when I trained with Stan Efferding and that's a perfect example of me. I hadn't, like I mentioned then, I hadn't gone over 545 in the squat in over 6 months, but I had been consistently going in and doing the work, doing the back down work, doing the reps, doing the volume, so that when a day like that was kind of like a meet environment, right?
Yeah.
A day like that comes around, it's not like, I mean, I still have that strength there.
Right.
It's not like just because I haven't touched anything near that I wasn't capable of it.
Right.
It was almost like I've been doing this work and saving my body so I can do something
Right.
like this.
And
because the fact is those heavy lifts are so hard on your body. And a lot of older powerlifters, Ed Cohn especially, he says you really only have so many of those in your body throughout your entire life.
Right.
So if you can get away with not doing them and still getting work in where you can progress that, then that's the best thing. If you only max out 3 days a year on 3 meets, then that's ideal. Then that's a sustainable thing that you can do for years and years and years and years. But if you're going in and you're maxing out every single week, that's fucking tough on your body, man.
Right.
And that's not very sustainable. So, and especially when athletes are putting their trust in me,
Right.
I don't want to fucking drive them into the ground,
And set them
burn
up for
them
failure.
out, yeah, and injure them, and then have them have a bad experience with the sport, because I fucking love this sport.
Right.
You know what I mean? I want people to have the best experience possible, and I want them to get strong, and I want them to stay healthy. And the way that I do things helps that with all my athletes.
And to finish what Cole was saying, so with Stan Efferdine, he ended up squatting an all-time PR. So it was 6'10", right?
Yep.
So we're talking 65 pounds above whatever you were training with. It was still there. You still had enough gas to give it everything you had, get an all-time PR, and now you're back to doing sub-maximal work.
Right.
For the next time you meet, that you can push that PR if you need to.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I have enough energy each training day to go in and give it my all. I'm recovered enough because I didn't redline myself on that top set or whatever, that I can go in and have a good solid training day the next day. And that all just continues to build off of each other.
Right.
And it's that momentum over time of having these solid days, solid day after solid day after solid day, not crushing yourself, but just pushing it a little bit further every single day. And that over time, you're going to get stronger anyway, because you're not going to have the time off because you've been injured. You're not going to have the time off because you just get sick of the sport. You're going to continue to build that over time. Hey, it's like the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah, you're going to be hungry the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's not that Cole isn't doing heavy reps, but he's just not doing 100% maximum.
Exactly.
He still does a heavy set.
Yep.
He'll do his back down sets. He'll do drop sets, whatever you want to call them. And that volume, I mean, if you're doing a set of 5 at any weight, that's remotely hard. Right. That's going to drive some metabolic change. You're going to get stronger for sure.
Absolutely.
And you won't be crippled the next day.
Yeah. And I think that's why that submaximal work is, and it's finally catching some momentum. And I think people are realizing that it's the smarter way to go, because people get injured less and they're able to sustain that top level of performance over a long period of time. Because, I mean, there's countless number of people that come in and they're fucking strong as hell, and then all of a sudden they get hurt and they fall off the map. You never hear from them again.
Right.
So if you're investing in me to be your coach, like, I'm literally doing everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen to you.
And you're always preaching that, let's say Monday's your squat day. If you blow your load when Wednesday's bench day comes around, or whatever day is on Wednesday, you're going to be just digging deeper into that well.
Exactly.
And how are you supposed to progress if you're constantly just trying to redline, like you say?
Yep.
But if you can, like you always say, if you can sub-maximally train and just push it a little bit each week, a little bit more and a little bit more, all of a sudden your sub-maximal training is beyond what your maximum was a long time ago anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're healthy and your joints don't hurt. And the next morning, again, you can get up and feel okay.
Yeah. My wrestling coach actually said this in high school, and he said, because that was always the biggest thing in wrestling, is right away when the season starts, like, everyone's just in super shitty shape. They're not, I mean, they may even be good shape, but they're not in wrestling shape.
Right.
Wrestling shape is like a fucking another level.
Yeah.
So he's like, every day you're going to come in and you're going to, like, think about running into a brick wall. If you fucking sprint into that brick wall, it's going to hurt bad. But if you just think about pushing that brick wall just a little bit further and further and further every single day, never running into it and hurting yourself, but just slowly pushing that every single day, before you know it, the distance you have is very far. Instead of just trying to fucking smoke it every single day, just slowly, gradually push that sucker a little bit further every day. It's going to pay off.
Yeah, and it'll eventually get further than you could have gotten it, having you just steamrolled it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a little background and kind of my thought process when it comes to coaching and training, and how I want my athletes to think about training and stuff like that. So I think just for my athletes to hear this and kind of know where I'm coming from, and know that I always have their best intentions in mind, but I'm also trying to keep them healthy for the long run. I think that's important for them to know. So
Yeah, he's keeping your enthusiasm in check.
yep. Another Take Note Tuesday, man. Hope you brought your notebooks out.
Because we're out.
Take Note Tuesday will drop every Tuesday.
Obviously.
Tuesday, we drop short bits of knowledge with Take Note Tuesday.
Thursdays, we drop the full podcast.
Don't forget to subscribe. And oh, yeah,
We'll take 5 stars.
Hit us up with a review. If you like us, let us know. If you don't,
give it to yourself.
Take Note Tuesday is a production of the Coaches Collaboration Podcast.